It's if you don't make it happen, who else is going to make it happen? Because who cares about your children more than you do as the parent? Because God is the perfection of every moral virtue.
What is the eternal or timeless value in homeschooling?
It equips the students of classical conversations to raise up families, to be godly men and women, and to inspire and impact the next generation. My children's future is depending on the intentional time that I spend understanding what I believe in. God is ultimate truth. God is ultimate justice. God is ultimate beauty. God is ultimate morality. So in growing in all these areas, you are literally becoming more like God.
Okay. Wow, I wish you could have poured this into me when you were 10. But Hi, my name is Sarah Moore, and I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. I'm a wife and a mother of 4, and our family has been homeschooling for 18 years. We are getting ready to begin our 14th year in Classical Conversations, also known as CC for short. Classical Conversations is a classical Christian community whose mission is to know God and to make Him known. Our founder, Lee Bortons, began in her basement in 1997 with her own sons and other families, and CC has grown to be worldwide now. And so today I have with me my oldest son, Elliot, who is a CC graduate, and he just has a passion for classical Christian education. So we will start off with just kind of going back to January of 2022. We had been homeschooling for many years at that point. It was Elliot, it was your senior year.
Yeah.
And I was just feeling exhausted, feeling kind of tired. So one day I entered your youngest 2 siblings' names into a lottery at a classical charter school in the area. And much to my surprise, they were accepted. And then we were faced with the decision whether or not they would go to school or we would continue homeschooling. And I remember at the time you begged me not to send them to school. You told me that even though it was a classical school, it was a charter school, they still could not teach from a biblical worldview, even if the teachers were believers. So just tell me a little bit, like, what was going through your mind at that time? Why were you so determined that your siblings continued to homeschool?
Yeah, so at that point, I would say that I was definitely beginning to realize the value of having a classical Christian education, and more specifically through CC, because I would say that the skills that we learn in the program of CC set us apart and give us a distinct advantage from other people in who are raised up in like the public education system, or even the like any other form of education. So I was also like starting to realize that, well, first of all, my siblings or we're gonna have a relationship for the rest of our lives. And I was also starting to realize that the things that I feel like God is calling me to do in this life, and the things He's calling me to revive and to change and to bring light back to, I can't do on my own. And I essentially needed people who could also use logic and could also reason, and who could push me and make me better. And who better to do that than the people who I'm already going to spend my entire life with? So I kind of was coming to that conclusion, and I was like, oh, you cannot send them to like, you know, if it's still like a charter school, you can't do that. Like they need to be able to think, to be able to reason, in order for them to have a future that directs them towards where God wants to take them in their lives. And it was kind of, it definitely wasn't as, like, the ideas I'm saying now weren't as ironed out then, but that was still the root. Like that was the root cause of why I was so adamant about that.
I love that. You mentioned skills, like through classical education. That's something that we learn as parents. We learn to focus on the skills and not necessarily a format for learning, but how to learn, like how to ask good questions, how to apply skills that last a lifetime. So tell me a little bit about the skills, or instead of subjects, we call them in the challenge years. Challenge goes from 7th grade and challenge A on up through challenge 4 and 12th grade. Tell me about the strands and the skills that you learn in those strands.
So I would say the first two that instantly come to mind that like as you're saying, like build and grow the skills that set us apart. I
Mm-hmm.
think the first one would be logic and reasoning,
Mm-hmm.
and that's like actually like a strand that we study. We study classical logic in classical conversations. I think the other one would be debate, and the reason for logic is I think that like a lot of people don't realize that. So imagine it's like decades ago
Mm-hmm.
and you went through all of school and then you get into the real world and you never learned like how to do math and arithmetic. Well,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to be at a significant disadvantage like in someone like the business world if you don't have that specific set of
Mm-hmm.
skills. So math is just the way that it's a lens through which we view the universe, and it's how we calculate and how we estimate different aspects of God's creation.
Mm-hmm.
Same with science. So mankind did not create math and science, but they discovered it and use it as a tool of understanding God and God's universe. So logic is basically the same. Logic is an essential tool to understanding the way that God works and the way that he has created his universe. So we talk about syllogisms. So syllogisms, essentially what that means is you have a series of proofs that lead up to a conclusion. So it's if the sky is gray and it is raining, if I go outside, I will probably get wet. So you can say if this, then this, or if this and this, then this. So that's basically logic, and that could be broken down and applied to any aspect of life, whether it's the most like basic, like whether or not you're going to get wet when you go outside when it's raining, or the most on the most philosophical level, like trying to understand God and the aspects of God and morality. And that's basically from the first like foundational level, we start to learn these skills. And then as it goes on, we start to apply them in different areas. So the second one is debate. Debate is, I think, essential in developing critical thinking skills. And I would say this because when we take an issue on, like one of the debates we did on Lincoln Douglas was whether or not a preventive war was morally justified. And we had to like define our terms and talk about the difference between a preemptive strike where we're attacking, like if we know they're about to attack us, or a preventive where if we think that they might attack, so we're going to attack. And then we're arguing from the morality, but it's not like you just pick a side and then debate that side. No, you have to actually defend both positions. So even if you already agree with one side going into it, you have to defend both sides of the argument. And through doing that, one, you learn how to research. So you're like pouring through like all this research, or you're compiling your arguments, and then you have to go and you have to refute it. So it makes you, it gives you the ability to think, it gives you the ability to learn, it gives you the ability to rationalize two different sides of an argument. Because it's one thing if, so say for instance, you all of your opinions, you're right about your opinions, but you don't know why you're right. Well, that's just as useless as if you were wrong about if your opinions were wrong. It's equally important for you to know why you believe what you believe, as for you to believe the things that are actually correct. So like they're both equally important, and you learn those skills through thinking about both sides of it in debate and with logic. So I think those are the two most important.
Wow, that's really good. I love that. And you mentioned that you didn't come to realize how valuable it was until like a little bit later, like maybe your junior or senior year. So tell me about the early years, like your middle school years. Did you understand how important a classical Christian education was, say like seventh, eighth, maybe even ninth grade?
So I would say absolutely not. So when I was in eighth grade and doing CC, we went through that phase where I was deciding whether or not I was going to homeschool all the way through high school and or go to a public school. And I don't think I ever like told you this before today, but the key decision that made me choose homeschooling over public school was so that I could sleep in more in the mornings. And I know that's like not a great decision like at all whatsoever. But no, I would say that there were definitely years that went by where I didn't see what we were doing as valuable. I didn't see the intrinsic worth. I saw it as, well, it's just another form of school and everyone has to do school. So I'm doing it begrudgingly because I have to.
Mm-hmm.
But I think like as I got older and as I started to step out into life, I found myself in situations where I was relying on the foundations that I had built while in classical conversations
Mm-hmm.
with the critical thinking skills, with the ability to learn. Like I can pick up any subject, and with enough time and enough intentionality, I can learn that subject.
Mm-hmm.
And the confidence that comes with learning how to learn through school and then applying that to real world like circumstances, I think is like that's huge.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I would say that I definitely didn't appreciate it as much as I should have then. But then I came to appreciate it like even when I was a senior.
Okay. Oh, that's great. So, what would you say to your younger self or to a middle school or a young high school student to encourage them to value their education?
That's a really good question. I think that the importance isn't necessarily in what you say, but the vision that you inspire. Because I think that like in times when like I was that age and I just had like a ton of Latin work to do or like a ton of papers to write, it would be very easy for me to not see the point
Hmm.
and just see for it to feel like, oh, this is just work for the sake of work.
Hmm.
And like when you're in that moment and you're going through the challenges of like getting the work done that's like before you, you're not necessarily thinking about the growth that's going to come from it. And also, if like someone have said just like work harder,
Hmm.
it would be like, okay, sure, you would kind of dismiss it. But I think that if I wanted to really make an impact on somebody in that way, I would sit down with them and I would talk to them about the why behind what we do in terms of like, so say for instance I was actually sitting with my younger self,
Hmm.
then like just like a debate, I
Hmm.
would, or just like a persuasive essay, I would first talk about agreements. It's like, okay,
Hmm.
you and I can both agree that God is the supreme being and us becoming like him and answering his call for our lives is the most important thing. So we can both agree that. So from that agreement, I would appeal. So like in Lincoln Douglas, you appeal to a virtue. So I would appeal to God as the virtue and becoming like him. Like that would be the virtue that I appeal to. And I would say that, well, through classical conversations, you grow in wisdom, you grow in knowledge, your level to your ability to know the truth grows, your ability to know and recognize beauty grows. So it's like all these attributes are God because God is the perfection of every moral virtue. So if God is the perfection of every moral virtue, God is ultimate truth. God is ultimate justice. God is ultimate beauty. God is ultimate morality. So in growing in all these areas, you are literally becoming more like God. And through growing in all these areas, it equips the students of classical conversations to raise up families and to be godly men and women and to inspire and impact their kids and the next generation. This is the future. God calls us. This is a theme all throughout the Bible, but he calls us to prepare for the future. This is like Noah in the Old Testament when God told him that there was going to be a storm that was coming. Well, he worked on the ark for 80 years. It wasn't just an instantaneous thing, but it was through his trust in God and through that clear vision that there is a storm coming and I need to be ready that drove him to get up every day and prepare. So, like, that's more on like a broader level, but on like an individual student level, I would be like, yeah, you want to become like Christ. This is how you do it. You want to have a successful life. This is how you do it. You want to be a spiritually godly person. This is how you do it. And then I think in painting that vision of the future, that would inspire them to do what is hard in the day to day because they would have that strong why behind it.
I love that. I love that. I feel like you've already answered a lot of this. Do you have any other words of encouragement for the parents who are walking alongside that middle schooler or young high schooler to just help them and just
Yeah.
help? Yeah.
Yeah, I would say for the parents, because ultimately, as a parent who is responsible for
Mm,
educating your children, that
mm,
is a leadership position.
mm,
And as a leader, it is your job to be the one who inspires your
mm,
students. But
mhm,
no one is going to be able to inspire other people if they don't already have a source of inspiration for themselves,
mm,
which means that if they don't truly believe in what they're doing,
mm,
they're not going to be able to communicate belief to other people because
mm,
they don't have that belief themselves.
mm,
So that comes with spending intentional time developing a relationship with God. Comes with intentional time reading. That comes with intentional time understanding the curriculum. Because once you understand it and you believe in it,
mm,
and you can talk about it like openly, it should be an understanding. You could talk about it in your sleep. Once you're at that
mm,
level, you can inspire anyone
yeah,
because
yeah,
your conviction of what you believe is so strong. You can
mm,
inspire that belief in other people,
mm,
and like to the parents that is not gonna like just happen overnight,
mm, mm,
and that's not gonna happen just like kind of going with the flow.
mm,
There has to be intentionality behind that,
that's good.
and again, like that's very very hard to do, and the human mind is
Mm,
always going to choose the path of least resistance.
mm,
If you have an easy path and a hard path, you're
mm,
always going to pick the easy one unless
mm,
there's a strong enough why behind the hard one. So if you're thinking from that point of view, it should be like, okay, my children's future is
mm,
depending on the intentional time that I spend
mm,
understanding what I believe in. So it's
mm,
like if you have that driving you, then boom, that sparks your belief, and then boom, your belief
mm,
sparks the inspiration in your kids, and you guys are going to be unstoppable.
mm.
That's what I would say to the parents.
Oh, I love that. That's so encouraging. That's so good. Wow, I wish you could have poured this into me when like you were 10, but it's great. Well,
Unfortunately, not.
yeah, yeah. Well, along those same lines, what do you think is the eternal or timeless value, as Lee Bortons will often call it, in homeschooling or in particular in doing CC? And again, I feel like you've answered some of this, but so like the eternal or timeless value in homeschooling through CC.
So I would say that the value in classical conversations is literally eternal. And what I
Mm,
mean by that is classical conversations is going to equip you with the tools, the critical thinking skills,
mm,
with the reasoning skills, with the understanding of how the world works
mm,
and how to move through life. And it's going to put you at an advantage, and it's going to set you apart from the rest of society at this
mm,
point. And all that is really good.
mm,
That's not the eternal value, though.
mm,
That's the foundation upon which you can build the eternal value.
mm,
Because when you're equipped with these tools, you are equipped with the tools to become a godly person.
mm,
And by becoming a godly person and raising up a godly family and raising up godly children,
mm,
then when they're adults, they're going to raise up godly children.
mm,
And now you have generations of people who have the opportunity to know
mm,
Christ and come to Christ's kingdom because of the work that you put in the now.
mm,
So it's literally eternal because these are people, these are brothers and sisters, these are children and
mm,
grandchildren and great grandchildren
mm,
that you will dwell with in the kingdom of heaven. Like this is
mm,
literally eternal. This is
mm,
not the 80 plus years that we live here.
mm,
This is forever, an eternity with
mm,
Jesus Christ.
mm,
And it's like so much of the ownership in society has been shifted off of the self.
mm,
But in reality, it's like no one else is thinking about your
mm.
children and their children but you. Like
Yeah,
it's if you
yeah.
don't make it happen, who else is going to make it happen?
Mm,
Because who cares about your
mm,
children more than you do as the parent?
mm,
Like it is literally eternal because you will spend the rest of eternity
mm,
with them in heaven
mm,
if you do it right. And that's the responsibility I hold on myself for my future family and my future kids. It's like
mm,
that's one huge responsibility,
mm,
but I can bear it because of the skills that I learned when I was brought up in classical conversations, is because I lean on Jesus Christ as my source of strength.
mm.
And Yeah, I would say that it is literally eternal in that regard.
That's beautiful, Elliot. Thank you. That's encouraging. Very encouraging to help us to persevere and to continue. So thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for sharing. And thank y'all for listening.